Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is Kameron Brooks, who was on my TV show a few months ago. I invited him to come back because he is a wealth of really important information, and I think you're going to find today's episode really interesting and informative. Thank you for coming on, Kameron.
Well, it's good to be here, Gail. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, you're welcome. Today's topic is going to be community Medicaid. Now, what is community Medicaid, Kameron?
Community Medicaid is different from skilled nursing home Medicaid. The qualifications for each are entirely different. So it's Medicaid programs that provide for assistance to people in their homes in the community rather than in a nursing home. So that's basically what it is. It's really community Medicaid. Medicaid will pay for services for you at your home.
Okay, and they can, your family can be the caregivers that they pay?
There is a program, one program in particular, it's called CPAP. It's Consumer Directed Care. And yes, a family member can be a caregiver. If it's a parent, they can be paid directly by Medicaid, or if it's a child caring for a parent, they can be paid. Otherwise, it would be an agency that is paid by Medicaid to provide the services, and a family member, other family member, could be an employee of that company.
Oh, okay. So the family member has to be hired by an agency in order to get paid to take care of their parent then?
Yes.
Okay. So it's less expensive for Medicaid to cover care in the home than it is in a nursing home?
Well, the difference is there have always been community Medicaid programs. They've been around for years and years and years. Just recently, and recently I mean in upstate New York, where we are about a year and a half ago, we have a new program. It's called MLTC, Managed Long-Term Care. That specifically was designed to provide skilled nursing type care in a person's home if the cost of doing that is 75% or less than what it would cost in a nursing home. Then the idea was that it'll save Medicaid money, so therefore those services should be provided in the home. So that's a relatively new program under MLTC.
Okay, so when the family member wants to get paid to take care of the person, the relative, the parent or whatever, then they go through all of the agency's training that they would be hired by?
Yeah, if they're hired by an agency, then they'd have to qualify. I mean, they have to have some training and have to have, some level of expertise to handle the situation that's needed for the family member that's going to be getting the services in home.
Okay. Now, what is the target population?
Well, community Medicaid applies to literally everyone, but most people I think that would be interested in it or need it would probably be people who are 65 and older. As we age out and we need more services to help us stay at home, that's where I think the biggest need is. It certainly applies to other people, but I see it in the elderly population, if you consider 65 elderly, which I don't, but nonetheless, if you're 80 years old living at home and it's hard for you to get all of the household duties done and things like that, then that's, I think, the population that's going to benefit most by community Medicaid.
Okay. Now, is there a limit to how many hours a family member can be paid to take care of their parent or whoever?
That would depend upon the specific circumstances. Let me just kind of go through a general description. If someone needs services, they would apply to the local social services department for community Medicaid. An assessment would be made to determine just what services are necessary that Medicaid can pay for, and just how many hours a day or how many days a week that those services would be necessary. So it's a fairly involved process to go through to be able to determine just what is necessary. And then if the services can be provided at home and it's cost effective, then you choose an agency, unless it's a parent or child, choose an agency to provide those services. And then if it's under that CPAP program, then a family member could then apply to be an employee of that company, get whatever training, and then provide the services.
Okay. So if it pretty much takes over the child's life, taking care of an elderly parent, it doesn't cover huge amount of hours then, right? It just...
Well, theoretically, under managed long-term care, theoretically, it's possible to have 24-hour care.
Really? Okay.
I've not personally been involved with a case yet in Western New York where we've actually done that. Most of my information comes from my colleagues in New York City, where it's been in place for 4 or 5 years now.
Oh, has it?
And it's not working well.
Oh, it's not?
No. The problem with MLTC, first of all, in the upstate area, outside of New York City, it's hard to find caregivers. A lot of rural areas just do not have people available.
Oh.
That is a problem. The other problem is that the companies that are providing the services are finding they're not being paid enough by Medicaid, so a lot of them are leaving the business because it's just not profitable for them to do it.
Oh, I see.
So it's hugely complicated, and there are a lot of obstacles, just practically speaking, to make the whole thing work. So that's why I keep saying it's theoretically possible for all this to happen in the home, but whether it will or not, nobody knows until you go through the process. But a lot depends upon availability of workers. And by the way, Gail, these workers are not being paid a lot of money. It's really minimum wage.
Yeah, I guess I was aware of that. Yeah.
I think the program that probably works the best for some of the people would be that CPAP, the consumer-directed care, where you have a family member who's committed to provide the services anyway because they're a family member.
Right.
Well, now they can get paid something for their services, but nobody's getting rich on these things.
No, oh no. But it's nice if when somebody has taken over taking care of their parent to keep them out of a nursing home, it's nice if they can get at least a little bit of help. You know,
Yeah.
It's better than basically giving up your life and going and doing it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
So I think it's nice that something is finally being done to help families. You know. Now, is skilled nursing care in the is it different from nursing home Medicaid, the skilled nursing care in the person's home?
Yeah, the qualifications are completely different. So it is possible to have some skilled care, nursing home care at home under the MLTC program. For a lot of other programs, it's more of just assistance at home. But the skilled nursing budgeting for that is completely different from community Medicaid. So when I say budgeting, that's a Medicaid term. Whenever you apply for Medicaid, you are budgeted for resources, which are assets, and income. So you get budgeted for both. Under a community Medicaid program, if you are a single person, your income cannot be more than $842 a month. That's the 2018 figure. And your resources can't be over $15,150. Now, if you are a married couple and one person is applying for Medicaid for home care, then the total monthly income for both can't be more than $1,233. And the total resource limit is $22,200 for 2018. Very low numbers. What happens is that if your income, well, if your resources are over that, you're not qualified for Medicaid, period. If your resources are not over the limit, but your income is, then you have a choice. Basically, there's three choices. First is a spend down, which means you have to spend your income down to that limit before Medicaid pays for the medical care. Secondly, they have what they call a buy-in program. So Medicaid pays all the bills, and you pay your spend down to the local social services department. The third, which is most attractive for people and probably one that is not talked about at the time of application, is a pooled trust. Now, if a Medicaid examiner is working with a family, the examiner might say, well, you have excess income, you can pay that to a pooled trust. If the examiner does that, they're being generous and helpful to the people. They don't necessarily have to do that. So a pooled trust is just a trust that's maintained by a not-for-profit. There's one in Buffalo that does a great job. And the idea of this is that you can take your excess income, pay it to a pooled trust, so now you qualify for Medicaid home health services, community Medicaid, yet your excess income is paid to this pooled trust, and then that trust can pay other non-medical expenses for you. And I think this is important because if I'm a single person and I own a home in Chautauqua County or I'm renting an apartment, $842 is not a lot of money to be able to pay non-medical expenses. I might not be able to do that at all. But if I have excess income of $300, $400, $500 a month that I'm used to spending for living expenses, I can pay that excess to a pooled trust, and then the trust can pay those bills for me, and I still qualify for Medicaid. So it's a very, very important tool to use to qualify for Medicaid, yet be able to have excess money available to pay for household expenses.
Okay. Now, these amounts that you were mentioning for single or married people, do they include like a personal residence, automobile, or retirement accounts?
That's a good question, Gail. No. If you have a personal residence, that is an exempt resource. Medicaid does not count it.
But you have to be living in it?
Yes. Got to be your personal residence. And cars, you're allowed to have at least one car if it's in use by someone in the family. So you may not be actually using it yourself, but if your spouse is using it or you have a child living at home and they're using the car, then it's exempt.
Okay.
It's even possible to have a second vehicle exempt if it's a special purpose vehicle like medical transportation or wheelchair van, something like that. So those things are exempt. And also retirement accounts. Even though you can have an IRA, which means you can tell the custodian, give me all the money. You can take it anytime you want. For Medicaid, as long as it's in regular payment status, RMDs, required minimum distributions, then it's not a resource for Medicaid. They just calculate the RMD, what you have to take out each year, and that's just divided by 12, and that's added to your monthly income.
Oh, okay. Now, when a person turns 70, they're required to take a minimum distribution of their retirement money. How is that calculated?
It depends upon your status and if you're married, and depends if your spouse is more than 10 years younger than you. But generally, most people use the uniform table that the IRS establishes, and it's just a mortality table. You go to the table, you look up your age in that year, and then it'll give you a divisor that you apply to the balance on the account. So the funny thing is, for IRS purposes, the calculation is based upon the December 31 balance of the prior year. So your 2018 RMD is calculated on the balance as of December 31, 2017. For Medicaid purposes, it's different. My experience in dealing with Medicaid agencies in the 5 counties I've dealt with is they're looking at the current balance, and they want you to take the RMD based upon the current balance, which may be the month before application.
Oh, I see.
But there's a table, you just go to the table, you look up your age, it tells you the divisor, you take the balance, divide it by the divisor, that's the annual RMD that you have to take.
Okay. Now, about this community Medicaid, the amounts of money that you were mentioning for single and married people, what does the 60-month look back apply?
Not for community Medicaid. That's the nice thing about it. For skilled nursing care, you have the 60-month look back. But for community Medicaid, it's a 1-month look back. So literally, if you're over-resourced, you're over the $22,000 limit, which many people would be. So that knocks you out of the box for Medicaid right from the get-go. But let's say we did a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and we put those excess resources into the trust. We wait 1 month, now you qualify for Medicaid. So in planning, in some instances, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust to protect assets, resources, so that the client will qualify for community Medicaid. Now, the caveat on that, and the problem is, if the person who's getting the community Medicaid transitions later into skilled nursing, now the 60-month look-back applies.
Oh.
You're rebudgeted for Medicaid, and all of the skilled nursing care Medicaid qualifications apply, including the 60-month look-back for transfers. So if a person, say within that 60-month period, does transition to skilled nursing and they apply for skilled nursing Medicaid, then the transfer to the trust is going to be a problem.
Okay. So.
But it's a problem with a solution. So.
Oh, good.
Well, if the trust is created properly, there's a way to basically get things back to the client.
Oh, okay.
And then we replan after that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. What does community Medicaid entail?
Well, it's services for all sorts of things. Other than, well, first of all, community Medicaid does not pay for social things like, so if you have a person that needs socialization, so they go to a daycare center, something like that, unless there's something more attached to it, Medicaid's not going to pay for that.
Oh,
it's not going to pay for light housekeeping or things like that.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, as one commentator said, if you can get on the bus and go places and whatnot, probably you're not qualified for community Medicaid.
Oh.
It's really, you have issues transferring out of one chair to another chair, to a room or whatnot, or bathing or things like that. But regulation of meds, cooking, things like that. There's these activities of daily living, ADLs. That usually is something that's applied in the Medicaid world, that there's like 6 or 7 of them, and if you can't do 2 or 3, you probably qualify for home care assistance to be able to do those for you, because you just can't do it yourself. So all those extra things, Medicaid will pay a home health care person to do. And it could be even subacute care, if you need to have certain medical treatments and whatnot that a nurse can come and do, Medicaid would pay for that. So it's hard to describe exactly what they cover and what they don't cover. It's, if someone believes that they might need those services, and you'll know when you need it because mom or dad just cannot function at home. Someone's got to be there.
Right, right.
You know. Now, one thing Medicaid will not pay for if you're subject to falling. So if someone is a risk for falling, they're probably going to be in skilled nursing. If it takes two people to lift someone, then probably the Medicaid won't pay for home care.
Oh,
So
okay.
a person has to be a little bit independent in terms of being able to get up and move, but they may need assistance. So
Okay.
that's okay. But each case is determined on its own basis, and analyses are made, and then a determination made whether the person qualifies for the care and how much care they get. And then if they're qualified on the income and assets, then they're qualified for Medicaid, and it's just a matter of who is available to provide the services and how many hours a day, how many days a week Medicaid will pay for.
Yeah, a lot of people are taking care of parents who have like dementia, different kinds of dementia, and they literally, I mean, the people can quite often get up and walk around and everything by themselves, but they're at risk of wandering away, and they have to have somebody with them all the time. You hear a lot of stories about people coming up missing that have different kinds of dementias and,
Yeah,
and things like that, you know, and
That's
so they
very
have to
true.
go looking for them. So
Yeah, if someone needs 24-hour monitoring, likely Medicaid is going to say, okay, that one is going to require 24 hours a day, someone has to be there, so that's likely going to be nursing home. Now, you can certainly go to a assisted living facility that has Alzheimer's or memory unit, like what Tanglewood has.
Yeah.
But that is largely private pay. So if you don't have the funds to pay it, then it's going to be skilled nursing.
because I've known people who had family members that that had various different types of dementia, and they were, you know, like some of them would be in situations where they literally had to take care of the parents. Like one person I know, two people that I know actually came down with cancer while they were taking care of their mothers who had Alzheimer's disease, and they were, because of, you know, their situation with income and things like that, that they absolutely had to take care of the parent themselves, because they would lose, like one guy that I know would have actually lost the house he was living in if he hadn't been taking care of his mother, because technically the house that he was living in had belonged to his parents. His father was deceased, but then the way their will was made out was, you know, it wasn't signed over to the son, and he literally could have lost his home, and you know. And then another woman that I know came down with cancer, and she was taking care of her mother for 5 years while she was undergoing cancer treatment. So, you know, for some reason she had to be the one taking care of her mother. So, you know, it gets really difficult sometimes.
That's very stressful.
Yes, yes.
And it's not surprising that you have a caretaker that might wind up with their own physical ailments because of the stress of taking care of an older person, especially a person with dementia, where you have to watch them like a hawk, and yeah, it's bad. I have a client right now whose wife is still at home, but she has severe dementia. We just had a family meeting with him the other day, and the question was, do we go the community Medicaid route to get services at home, or should she be placed in the nursing home? And after an hour and a half of talking about it, the end analysis was, it's going to be a whole lot easier on him to just have her go to a nursing home. I mean, the process of going through the community Medicaid application and the foregone conclusion that she's deteriorating, so we know she's going to be in a nursing home at some point. And this is really taking a toll on her husband. And so my recommendation was, I think she should go now, because we can do the application, and qualifying her for Medicaid is going to be far simpler and less stressful on him. He can certainly go visit her, but he can go back and he can have a normal life. And this gentleman and his wife, they're in their just late 60s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
so she kind of had early onset dementia.
I mean, that happens. One thing I wanted to mention, because we talked earlier about the qualification for community Medicaid as far as the income and resources. And I want to draw the distinction between that and skilled nursing care. So if someone's in the nursing home, because the qualifications are entirely different. If the person in the nursing home is allowed to have $50 of income a month, that's it. That's just for a personal needs account. But the spouse is allowed, the spouse living at home outside, in the community, is allowed to have $3,090 a month of income.
Oh.
So community Medicaid, the total is $1,233, but with skilled nursing, the income is $3,090. It could be higher. For instance, the gentleman I was just talking about, he has about $6,500 worth of income a month.
Oh.
So he gets to keep, we did the analysis, he gets to keep about $5,700 of that. He still has to pay some towards the nursing home. The wife's Social Security goes to the nursing home, but he still gets to live on $5,700 because he has most of the income in the family, so that works out pretty well. So the income limit is higher in skilled nursing. The asset limit, the resource limit, is also much higher. So rather than $22,200 for community Medicaid, the community spouse, the one who is still living at home in skilled nursing context, gets to keep a minimum of $74,820 and a maximum of $123,600. So the budgeting is completely different, and the available resource limits are much higher for a community spouse in the skilled nursing. And plus the house and the car, still exempt resources.
Okay. Is that because he's living in the
Yes,
house?
yes.
He would have to be living in it in order to
Yes,
not lose it.
The state policy is this: if you have a married couple with one who's in the nursing home, you still have a spouse who's in the community. That spouse needs a certain amount to live on. They need a house, they need a car, and they need a certain amount of income and a certain amount of assets to sustain their own lifestyle. And for a lot of people, that works pretty well. For other people who are over the limit, well, then we have to do planning for them. So that's the big difference between the community Medicaid and the skilled nursing Medicaid.
Okay. So, how does a person go about qualifying for community Medicaid?
Well, first of all, they have to have the need, and secondly, they have to make an application for Medicaid through the local Chautauqua County Department of, I guess they call it Human Resources now, the old Department of Social Services. And you contact a caseworker through the department, and they come out and make an assessment, and then they'll ask for information. How much income do you have? What resources do you have? And it's a complete list. They want to know everything. Do you have a house? Do you have a car? How many cars do you have? Do you have a classic car in the garage? Insurance policies, because cash values of insurance policies are money in the bank as far as Medicaid's concerned. Bank accounts, retirement accounts, all that information you have to prove to the department. The department Medicaid examiners are actually doing the job for the New York State Department of Health. So in New York State, the Department of Health runs Medicaid, and they contract with the local agencies to do it at the local level. So our Medicaid examiners here in Chautauqua County have to basically do what DOH says, and that's why they have to have all this information to be able to verify that the person in fact does qualify for Medicaid.
Yeah, there is a lot of paperwork involved. I remember having to take care of all kinds of stuff when I was taking care of my mother. What happens when one transitions from community Medicaid to skilled nursing care?
The process is a little bit easier in that context because you already have a Medicaid case open. So it's a transfer from community-based Medicaid to skilled nursing. But again, now you have to report and give copies of all your bank statements for the last 60 months. So that 60-month look back still applies. So to qualify for skilled nursing care, nursing home Medicaid, you have to give 60 months worth of bank statements and investment account statements, retirement account statements. You still have to go through that whole process. But, and it still takes a while to get through. And if you are over-resourced, then you are not going to qualify for Medicaid. So then, at that point, the examiner will say, they may approve your application, say, okay, we approve your application, but you have too many resources, so you have to spend those resources down for the next month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is, and then after that, then Medicaid will pay.
Okay. Now, what is a consumer-directed personal assistance program?
Oh, that was the program we were talking about earlier, that you can have a family member be paid to take care of you.
Yeah.
That's why it's consumer-directed.
Okay. Let's see, the long-term home health care program.
Yeah. That's just another one of the many community-based programs that Medicaid has. It's impossible, really, for a person to know what they qualify for. Really, what they're going to have to do is contact the local Department of Human Resources and start the process. And then once we identify what the need is, and if there is a family member who wants to do that work, well, then it may be the CPAP, the consumer directed. If there's nobody available to do that, well, it may fall into one of the other programs, including the long-term home health care program or the Medicaid Advantage program. There's just a laundry list of different programs that are specific for particular purposes, and I'm not sure why we have so many of them. We have the PACE program, which is the Programs for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It's really, that program is more like health insurance coverage. So if you're in the PACE program, you are seeing doctors and healthcare providers that are employed by that PACE agency. But it also may include some daytime daycare services. But it's kind of health related with some daycare and some home care services. So their home care services are provided for in all these different programs to some degree. It's just a matter of pigeonholing into the one that works for the particular person at that time.
And I have heard that there is something called long-term care insurance that people can get. Do you know anything about that?
Sure. Long-term care insurance is provided by, obviously, insurance companies. It's changed radically in the last probably 4 or 5 years. Traditionally, it was long-term care insurance that you bought for 3 years of coverage, and it paid 100% of the nursing home cost that was designed to cover that. Most all policies pay X dollars a day for nursing home care, and then half of that amount for home care. So if you start off with maybe only needing some home care, you have the insurance, you can hire people, you can be the employer and hire specific people, or you can hire an agency, and once you go on claim with the insurance policy, then they will pay half the daily rate for the home care. And then if you transition to skilled nursing, whatever the balance is in your account, then they will pay for the daily care there. Now, that is kind of the overview of long-term care insurance. There are programs now where you can buy a certain level of benefit. Let's say you only want to buy $100,000 worth of benefit, and you can do that. So and you can buy 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, and what's that's designed to do is to protect resources up to that amount. So if all you had was $100,000 and that's what you want to protect, you could buy a long-term care policy that qualifies, that will pay out that $100,000, and then your $100,000 is protected, and you don't have to spend that down. Now, long-term care policies are underwritten by insurance companies, which means you have to qualify for them. The older you are, the more medical issues you have, the less likely you are going to be insurable.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
They want you to buy it while you're still healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you're an insurance company, you do not want to insure someone you know is going to cost you money. So if you have a Parkinson's diagnosis, or multiple sclerosis, something like that, any type of condition, medical condition that's likely to land you in a nursing home, well, an insurance company doesn't want to insure you for that. But they want to insure people that maybe will never go to an insurance or to a nursing home. So, I mean, nobody really knows. The catch-22 is you probably qualify very easily at age 50. But now you're going to pay for it for what? Maybe 30 years before you use it.
Until you're 80?
Yeah. All right, but if you're 80, you may not qualify for it, and if you do, the premium's going to be pretty high. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, and I've had people tell me that long-term care insurance can be very expensive.
It can be, but I think the way you look at long-term care insurance is this. It's like health insurance. And the problem I think many people might have with that is that if they've worked for an employer that provided their health insurance all their life, they've never been used to paying that. Now, just a few years ago, when I was still paying for family health care insurance, I was paying $12,000, $13,000 a year for health insurance for family level. Well, a long-term care insurance policy that cost me $2,500 or even $5,000 a year doesn't sound so expensive. But if you're not used to paying that level of premiums a year, yeah, it does seem kind of shocking to you. Our homeowners insurance cost $1,000 or $1,500 a year, but long-term care cost much more than that. And the premiums aren't fixed forever. They can go up, and in fact, they have been going up. But anybody that is considering long-term care insurance should investigate it. There are a lot of reputable insurance agents, financial agents in town that, in Jamestown and around, that can deal with long-term care insurance. It's just a matter of the decision to protect my assets, to give me income that I can then spend on home care or nursing home care. Is it worth what I'm going to have to pay for it?
And managed long-term care would be what?
That's that new program I was telling you about, MLTC, Managed Long-Term Care.
Okay.
And that was the program rolled out to specifically allow for skilled nursing care that would otherwise be in the nursing home, but allowing it to be at your home. And that's the program I told you that's not working very well downstate at all.
Because they're having trouble. Yeah, my brother retired in January, but up until that time, he had been working for Chautauqua Opportunities as their grant writer. And he would have conversations with the nurses that worked with the caregiver section of that agency, and they told him that It's really hard to get people to work in this one certain area of Chautauqua County. It's hard to get anybody to agree to work there, and I don't know why that would be, but...
Well, I have some personal thoughts on
Oh,
that. My personal thought is nobody likes paying taxes. So there are people that will say, yes, I will work for you. I'll come in 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and help you out and this and that, and this is what I want. I want, whatever it is, $10, $11, $12 an hour under the table. I want you to pay me in cash. Why? Because I'm not going to report it. And I'm not going to pay Social Security tax on it. I'm not going to pay income tax on it. And then if you say, well, I can't do that, really shouldn't do that, I need you to be on a payroll of some sort, then it's all right, well, now you've got to pay me $18 an hour. Because what I really want is $12 an hour in my pocket, and now if it's going to cost me income taxes, Social Security tax and all that, then I want more. And that's the issue. I have a number of people I've met with over the years that have been paying private care workers under the table. That's risky, very risky to do that. But we have people that just are not willing to be on the payroll. They're willing to work, but they're not willing to be on the payroll.
And that can be awfully, it can be awfully expensive for a family to be paying $18 an hour for a caregiver. Not everybody can afford that. A lot of people can't afford it. I mean, we're living in a low-income part of the country here in Chautauqua County.
Right, well, that's true. And the only thing that we can do as attorneys is just advise people. If you are paying someone under the table, and here's the problem that's going to come up. You're paying someone under the table, they're working in your home, they're taking care of mom, let's say, and mom falls, but she falls on top of the care worker. They both slip and fall down. Now the care worker has a broken something, goes to the hospital. The first question the hospital people ask is, who were you working for? I was working for so-and-so as a care worker in their home. And maybe the care worker doesn't have insurance, but somehow this can get back to the Department of Labor. And this has happened around the state. Most of the cases I've heard of have been down in New York City, but it's usually a result of the worker, him or herself, getting injured and then claiming that they were an employee. And it doesn't make any difference that they agreed or would only work under the table and get paid under the table. If you were working and you established that you were an employee and the mom was the employer, then mom has a real problem with the Labor Department. They're huge fines.
Oh, really?
Huge fines for doing that. So I tell people, as bad as it is as far as cost is concerned, the only safe way to hire someone is to establish a payroll or hire them through an agency. It's going to cost a lot more, but if that worker gets injured somehow while working in the house taking care of mom, then they've got all the statutory compliances and workers' comp and all that thing that are going to help out, and you're not going to be subject to liability. Gail, it's a very imperfect world when it comes to home health care. Very imperfect.
It certainly is.
The whole Medicaid program is hugely complicated. Personally, I think the community Medicaid area is much more complicated than skilled nursing. But yeah, it's complicated. And I was at a meeting this last summer of the Elder Law section of the State Bar Association. One session where a couple of attorneys that are more experienced with the community Medicaid and actually helping clients through that. And I remember the one lady said, the one thing you do not ever do is guarantee the client anything, because you don't know. All you can do is help them through the process, but you can't guarantee anything's going to be there at the other end. It's that complicated, and complicated in terms of the Medicaid system itself, and then you're dealing with other agencies, because once you qualify for Medicaid, you've got an agency that you have to work through unless it's at CPAP. And then the agency that's providing the home care is dependent upon the employees. And what if they just don't show up? And these people are not making the kind of money that they really care if they just have had it and they quit. They just call and say, I'm not coming today. And then where are you?
Right.
So it's very tough.
Right. Now, getting back to the topic of spouses here, does spouses include people in same-sex marriages?
Now it does, yes.
Now it does. Oh,
Yep.
that's good. That's good news. So,
Yeah, if you are married, you are spouses.
now sometimes, which is something that's been going on a lot in recent years, where people prefer to just live together instead of getting into becoming legally married. How do things go when they get into this kind of a situation?
Big problem.
Big problem.
Big problem. Yeah, if you're not married, whatever benefits and protections there are for spouses, there are none for live-ins. So if you're living with somebody and you have joint accounts and joint assets with that person, that's going to be difficult. And if that other person needs Medicaid, they are a single person for Medicaid purposes. And they're budgeted as a single person. So for instance, with skilled nursing, actually it's the same. Skilled nursing and community-based Medicaid, that person can only have $15,150 worth of assets. So they could be over-resourced, not qualify for Medicaid, where if they were married, the spouse would be able to tack on more exempt resources, but they can't because they're not married. So that's an issue, but the reverse is also an issue too. How about people who are married but separated?
Oh.
I've run across this several times where, yes, we're still married, but we've been separated for 20 years. I live here, he lives there. And I say, my advice is you better get divorced. Because if that other person goes to a nursing home, you are still married. And under New York law, you have an obligation to support your spouse. And we don't care that you don't like him or that you've been living apart for 20 years. Your assets and your income are still exposed. So the problem goes both ways.
Okay, so if people are just living together, let's say they've bought a house together, but they're not legally married. If one of them goes in a nursing home, can the house be, taken away from the other person?
That is going to be a complicated situation. I've not run into that yet. There are exemptions in the law for homes, primary residences that are owned by, in part, by other people. For one that comes to mind is siblings. So if I'm living in a home that is owned by me and my sibling, then that's an exempt resource to the sibling, especially if they're living there. But unrelated person, it's not. Under the statute, you look at the statute and the regulations, an unrelated person owning a half interest in the house is nothing. So presumably, the person qualifying for Medicaid, their one half of the property is a resource because maybe they're in the nursing home now. Now, if they're at home, it's going to be exempt resource, but if they're in a nursing home, it's not going to be an exempt resource. Now, you can go further because everybody does this too. When you go to a nursing home and you own your own house and now it's exposed, you file a notice of intent to return home.
Oh.
Everybody does that.
Okay.
That allows them to qualify for Medicaid. The county is allowed to put a lien on the home. And at some point, if it's determined, and this can be, that intent to return home can be overridden by a doctor, then maybe that resource is now available and has to be dealt with. But at the very least, the county's going to put a lien on the home. So you have the person with their live-in paramour And if they own the house jointly, now you've got a lien on half of it. So it's all complicated.
So the person in the relationship that's not the one in the nursing home could wind up having to pay a bunch of money or something?
Yeah, let's say they want to sell the house because they, without the other person there in the home providing income and whatnot, they can't live there. So they go to sell a house, and then now there's a lien on it. So now that has to be dealt with.
So it's safer for people to get married than to not get married then?
If they're living together, yes. If they're not, no.
Okay, I just wondered about that. We're down to 7.5 minutes here. Were there any other things that you wanted to bring up while you're here today?
I think I'd like to circle back to the pooled trust issue.
The pooled trust issue.
Because
okay.
this can be very helpful for people in the community Medicaid situation. People that need community Medicaid and they qualify for it, but they have $300, $400, maybe $500 of excess income. And I want to stress that that income can be paid to a pooled trust, and that income can be used to pay other household expenses, mortgage payments, electric bill, heat bill, taxes, everything. So it's a way of being able to maybe take all my income and be able to use it for myself to stay home and pay all the bills here and still access Medicaid to be able to pay for home health care and whatnot, in a situation that if I wasn't able to have that extra income available, I might not be able to stay living where I'm living. So it's very, very important. The pooled trust that we use is run by a not-for-profit in Buffalo. You sign up for the pooled trust. There's a joinder agreement. You join the pooled trust. An attorney has to review the joinder agreement. The not-for-profit will not let you do it yourself. You have to have an attorney review it. And then there's a procedure. And they make a fee on this, so it's not free, but it's definitely worth doing. The one catch you have to watch out for is when the Medicaid recipient dies, when they pass away, whatever's in that pooled trust stays in the trust.
Oh, okay.
So if you had a situation, husband and wife, and their income was $5,000, $6,000 a month, I'm not sure that a pooled trust is that good to shield, say, $4,000 or $4,500 a month of that income, and because it may not all be spent on household things, and it may accumulate, and then when a person dies, then the Medicaid recipient dies, the money stays in there. But it is a good tool to use, and people should be aware of it.
Now, do they have to go to a lawyer to get one of these trusts?
Yes, they have to have a lawyer to review the joinder agreement with the pooled trust company, because that is a requirement from the pooled trust.
Okay.
They want to be sure people understand the joinder agreement and what the trust provisions are.
Okay. Now, what do people do? How would they go about, who would they contact if they want to apply for community Medicaid?
They have to do it through the local department
The
of
local
Human
department
Chautauqua County
of
Department
Social
of Human
Services?
I think it's Human Resources. I
Human
think is what they call it now,
Resources?
but yeah, that's where the application would be sent to.
Okay.
Those are the
Okay.
people to contact.
Okay. Now, the last time I had you on my program, I remember you saying something about you lived in a condominium, was it?
Yes.
A condo living. And you said that you highly recommend it. Would you tell our viewing audience why you highly recommend condo living?
Oh, I downsized from a 3,200 square foot house that was built in 1919 and needed a lot of maintenance to my 1,500 square foot condo with attached one-car garage that needs no maintenance.
Oh.
We just pay a
Okay.
monthly fee, and the lawn's taken care of, everything's taken care of. When I want to leave and go, like I've been gone the last 3 weeks, every week to meetings and whatnot, I just lock my door, drive out the driveway, text my neighbor to tell her to pick up my mail once in a while, and I go.
Oh, okay.
That's why I like condo
It's,
living.
it's just very convenient. You don't have as many responsibilities.
No. I love it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Do they have activities for you?
No. Our condo is very small. There's only 4 units, and it's
4 units.
just our living spaces.
Oh, I see.
And
And it includes a garage.
It includes a garage, yes.
Yeah, that's really nice. I see that you drive a little sports car. You can't drive that in the winter, can you?
No, as a matter of fact, today is my last day with that car.
Oh, okay.
I also have a bigger car.
Oh, okay.
That's a SUV and all-wheel drive.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
this is my my adolescence coming back out at age 69. So I love my little car.
Yeah, it's cute. I just wondered about that because I thought that might be kind of hard to get through the snow in something.
It's
that's,
impossible to get through the snow.
Yeah, and then I always kind of preferred something bigger, you know. I think that, you know, I want the people in the semis that are driving the semis to be able to see me.
Well, when you drive a car, now mine's a Mazda Miata, right, so it's very small. The whole thing only weighs 2,700 pounds. So in order to drive it, you have to fool yourself into thinking that it's so small I can get in and out of trouble very quickly.
Really? You think
Well, that's
so?
what I tell myself. So if a semis gives me a problem, I can move over very quickly and move around, which is true. The car is very nimble. But that's how I justify that it's very safe when it maybe not so much. But
Oh,
That's how I
just
convince
wondered.
myself.
I just wondered. I hope that everybody has gotten a lot out of this talk that we did today. I hope it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, at least it's information that maybe a lot of people don't know about. The
Right.
important thing to remember is that anything in the Medicaid world is highly complicated, and it's even more so in community Medicaid. And anybody who needs the Medicaid services needs to ask questions of whoever they're talking to. You know, what programs are available? What are the programs? Elements, what can fit my case, and if I am over-resourced or over-incomed, if that's a word, what can I do about that? And they need to know that, especially with community Medicaid, if you have more income than you qualify for Medicaid, there's a tool with that pooled trust to be able to put that somewhere where you can still use it. That's the important thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, well, I really want to thank you for coming on, and I think that you have a lot of information. You know a lot about things that other people don't know about. And
Well, I'm happy to oblige.
good. Well, I guess they can't hear us.